what SSL is. So essentially, what SSL is, or why it's important. A lot in the earlier days of the internet, we just had HTTP, which was the hypertext transfer protocol. Not to go too deep in that, it's just essentially how web browsers go onto one server, which is your computer, sends a request out to the internet asking for a specific server. So I'm going to draw it out. So let's say this is you. Yep, let me put the right click on. So this is you. This is your house/server. And again, do not make fun of my drawing. It's not as it's okay. It's bad, but it's not as bad as you think it is. But it's kind of okay. So this is you. This is the internet. Again, please do not make fun of my drawing. Yes, that is not a basketball. That is the globe. Um, okay, that's clearly a basketball. Okay, globe, because I can't seem to draw a globe right now. And this is let's say you want to go to YouTube. Normally, when you send a request to the internet, give me YouTube. What the internet will go do is it will go ask YouTube. The internet, you'll send that request out to the internet. The internet will then go over to YouTube, or Google, in this case, Google's servers, and say, this user wants YouTube. Right? So you send a request to the internet asking for YouTube. Internet then tells YouTube that this user you wants the YouTube. Then YouTube would then normally what would it without any SSL, what will happen is YouTube will send this request back to the internet, and then the internet will then send it back to you. The problem here is this request is going through the internet, and it's not necessarily secure. Anyone can read this request and see what it's about. Now with SSL, you can think of SSL as creating a underground tunnel directly from your house to YouTube. It still goes through the internet, right? Uh, but the internet has a specific stop point in there, versus you going in and out. So SSL is essentially a fully secure connection between you and the server that you're trying to request from. Um, with that, and the reason why that is because SSL essentially, and I like to use this analogy. Like I read it recently somewhere. It's like a club. So think of your website as the club, and I'm gonna just scroll up here a little bit. So let's get the SSL to page here. All right. So Google doesn't want me to go any further. um, that's fine. So essentially, what would happen is that this lower, oop, it's looking okay. This lower section here is essentially what SSL is. It's just creating a direct tunnel between you and the server you're trying to reach. So, and kind of get more back into the club scenario. Think of your website as a club. Everyone is trying to get into the club. A club without a bouncer would let anyone in. You can just, well, think of a club. Really, a club without a restaurant. Literally, a club without a bouncer is more of a restaurant with music, because anyone can just walk in and sit down. But in this case, let's just think of it in terms of the club. You already know you're already in the light club. You don't necessarily want it to be packed, and you don't want the wrong kind of people to come in without you knowing, essentially. The reason that you want SSL is because you will just have people you have people just walking into your server. So now, instead of this being you going to YouTube, let's think about it in terms of you and your audience. So we're actually going to reverse this. So this time you are over here. Your audience is here. Now, let's say, and this is the internet. again, basketball globe, because I'm not good at shapes, but really more these are more just visual cues than anything else. Please, I did not go to art school. I'm not the best drawer. People are like, oh, you're a web designer. No, I doing freehand drawing is not the easiest thing, and I want to say respects out to anybody who does freehand drawing, because it is not easy. But back to this. So yes, your audience wants. Let's say you sell phone cases on your website. Your audience wants to buy that phone case. Your audience is gonna say, tell tell your website. Your audience is telling the internet to tell your website that I want a phone case, right? When they request that phone case, they're just sending the request out to the ether, which is the internet, and then the internet will then route over the course of a bunch of jumps between server to server. Excuse me. Will then send that request to you. You are then told they want that case, and so they go to your website. They request it. They say they want a case. You send them back the page with you send them back the page with the case. And now your audience is viewing the page with the case on it. Now, the problem is, if they want to pay, you don't necessarily want your client's payment materials going out to the ether and then coming back to you. You want your clients and your audience payments going directly to you in a secure channel, because and just kind of give you an example of what this is, any sort of unmanaged, any sort of connection out from your server that is not protected by SSL is not protected. Anyone can see that connection. It's just kind of floating out there. Anyone with the right configurations and knowing what you're doing can kind of almost hijack that request midway, and there goes your users information, and now it's out there on whatever situation it is. People are using it. So the best way to mitigate this is to have SSL. Like I said before, you will have a direct channel, and while you shouldn't even have the pages being served over this, all your pages should be going directly from your audience or directly from you to your audience. And now I realize I'm spending too much time in this section here, but that's essentially why you'd want SSL. It's so that you don't have to worry about your client or your audience or your customers' information being out there in the ether and not essentially being protected, right? It's just kind of like you don't want to keep your clients and or your audience or your customers. You don't want them to feel like they don't have the security that they would want. So that's a basic, and I really mean like the bare basic minimum explanation of SSL, and how it works.